week I'm driving the 2020 Ram Rebel Ecodiesel. So the Ecodiesel is the third generation for the diesel. Ram had two generation before this generation. This one is new for 2020. So Ram had some issues with the first and second generation, so they've been improving a lot this engine. If we take a look under the hood, you can find the Ecodiesel. It's a V6 3-liter turbo diesel, good for 260 horsepower and 480 foot-pounds of torque. The Ecodiesel is the class leading for torque with 480. Pretty awesome, you know, tons of torque for that little engine. A lot of things been improved for this new Ecodiesel. Pretty much everything around the engine's been changed. Turbo, injectors, piston and all that. All these improvements been put into the Ecodiesel to improve the fuel economy, the performance, the sound of it, and also long-term fiability for the Ecodiesel. So a lot of improvement for that new engine. So the model we're driving this week, it's a Rebel. You can notice a Rebel by the design of it. The Rebel, basically, it's an off-road model in the Ram lineup. You can find other off-road packaging on the market at Ford with the FX4, the Chevy with the Trail Boss. So it's a more capable off-road truck, but you can notice it's more sport. If we look at the grille in the front, you got that black grille with a big Ram logo. You got those tow hooks underneath. You've got that awesome looking hood. This one's a sport hood, so it's a little bit more higher, more muscular. You've got those air vents here. If we step in the side of the Ram Rebel, the Rebel is a bit higher. This one's got the Bilstein suspension, so it's part of the Rebel packaging, so more beefier shock and also higher. You can get also the air suspension with the Ram Rebel. With the air suspension, you can really play with the height of your truck, and it's a little bit more comfortable, but I think this one's a little bit more capable with that Bilstein suspension. Also, you've got skid plate all over underneath the truck, and you've got a locking rear differential in the back. You can turn it on just with the press of a button inside of the cabin. Another key feature of the 2020 Rams is the new tailgate. It's a multi-function tailgate, so there's a multiple way to use that tailgate. So first of all, you can open it like the any typical tailgate. Comes down really slowly. But what's new for 2020, you can open it this way. It's a 60/40 door. So these are really practical if you got a trailer hooked up to your Ram. It's kind of like their version of the multi-pro tailgate from GMC. So this one is really useful with a trailer on. The GMC's got other function, a little bit more function for the GMC one, but this one is more focused if you got a trailer on. So with this tailgate, you can see you got an easy access, to reach deeper inside of your box easily with this style of opening your tailgate. And also you can use that traditional step here easily to step in just like that. It's not as useful as the GMC one, but still you can use it, and it's part of the truck already. So the truck we're driving this week has got the longer box with the quad cab. Usually I always drive crew cab with short box, But this one this week, it's got the quad cab. What's pretty practical about this quad cab, it doesn't get those suicide doors. So if you're sitting in the back, you don't have to wait for the front passenger to open their door, and now you're able to open yours. These little doors, you can see they're shorter because it's a quad cab. So if we step inside of this cab, as you can see, there's a little bit less space than the crew cab. The crew cab is really comfortable to sit 4 or 5 people. The quad cab, you know, it's good for kids. You can sit an adult there, but not for a long trip. Basically, you get a little bit less space. It's still practical. You can lift those seats. You got that flat floor, but it's really a smaller cab than the crew cab. If we step in the front of this Ram Rebel, we can notice by the inside easily it's a Rebel by the seats. You get those big logos on the seat. I really like those seats. They're really comfortable. They're good looking also. Obviously, Ram's got one of the best interior on the market. A few key features you can notice inside of this Ram. First of all, you got that knob. You can change your gear with this knob. Some people love it, some people hate it. You can change also your 4x4. Here you got your 4x4 high and low. Here it's part of the Rebel package. You can lock your rear axle, and also here you got your hill descent assist. Those are off-road functions. Here you can notice that massive 12-inch screen. It's one of the best looking screen you can get on the market. It's really easy to use. It's really more friendly for someone who's always clean, who doesn't work with their truck, but still this truck looks good with that screen. It's easy to use. It's really quick also. You still have some buttons, but for my point of view, you're missing some buttons with that screen. If you're more button kind of guy, maybe this screen is a little bit too much for you. But if you're a tech guy, you're techie, you like to play with your iPad or any smartphone, you're gonna find this screen to be really easy to use. All right, behind the wheel of the Ram Rebel Ecodiesel, the model I'm driving this week is around 79,000 Canadian. Pretty expensive truck, but this one obviously it's well equipped. It's got the Rebel package, the 12-inch screen, the spatial multi-function tailgate, the optional Ecodiesel under the hood. So it's a pretty well equipped truck. It's the first time I'm driving a new generation of Ram without the air suspension. So this one's got the Rebel suspension under, the truck. And, it feels special. First of all, the ride is way rougher with a normal suspension. Seriously, with the air suspension you've got on other models, it's one of the best rides you can get in the half-ton truck market. But even if the ride is not as comfortable as the air suspension, I like those built-in shocks. I like these kind of ride a little bit rougher. It's an off-road package, and also durability wise and all that. I like when my suspension stays at the same level all the time. I know there's a lot of advantage for the air suspension, but for me, especially here in Canada, when it's like -30 and I see my suspension going up and down, I just get worried at the long time if that suspension is gonna last. So for me, the built-in shocks could be my #1 choice for the Ram. I like the way they ride. I like the way they're able to get the bumps, and in off-road condition how they react. So for me, even if the ride is a little rougher than the air suspension, and maybe also you gotta sacrifice a little bit on the fuel economy, I think is the way to go. Speaking of fuel economy, obviously with the air suspension you can go in aero mode, so the truck will lower down and you get better aerodynamics. So far I'm on the highway right now. I'm doing about 10.5 liter per 100 kilometers. Again, you know, we're in the Rebel, you know, in lower trim level or more aerodynamic model, you probably be able to get better fuel economy. Also, I'm on winter tires. It's winter time here in Canada. So, so far, you know, not bad, you know, still impressive. So it's the third generation of this engine. Obviously, lately I've been driving a lot of the Sierra 1500 with the Duramax, and also the Silverado with the Duramax, basically the same truck, different brand. I've been doing a lot of tests. I've got really impressive fuel economy. So far, I'm not able to match the number of the GM products, but it's pretty close, you know. It's about 1 liter to 2 liter more than the GM overall, you know, averaging for both. So in those conditions, the way I was driving this week, using 4x4, doing a little bit of like country roads, highway, and also in the city, you know, overall, again, it's about 1 to 2 liter, a little bit more than the GM products. All right, power-wise, you know, the Ram's got the best-in-class torque with 480 foot-pounds of torque. You know, if again I'm comparing this engine to the GM one, even if this one has got more torque, the GM engine with the 10-speed transmission is way more fun to drive than this. This feels really like a work truck, the way it behaves, the way it accelerates, the sound of it. It's a little bit more, it's got a little bit more noisy. It's noisier than the GM. The GM is super quiet. Again, this one's a third generation of that engine, and the GM is completely a new engine, so probably, you know, they're still upgrading an older engine, and GM is just build this engine from scratch. That's probably why it's a bit more fun to drive and also a little bit more quiet than this one. But again, the stats between these two engines, between the Ram and the GMs, are pretty close. The GM's got a little bit more horsepower, this one's got a little bit more torque. But again, when you are behind the wheel, the GM is way more fun to drive. One of the reasons also why the GM is probably a little bit more fun to drive and also work with it, it's a 10-speed transmission. This one's got 8-speed transmission. So, you know, with the 10-speed, the diesel engine doesn't really like to rev higher in RPM. They got that low RPM max torque. So that's why when you have a little bit more gear, sometimes it helps those tiny, smaller and diesel engine. One thing I noticed, it's really, you know, Ram use a V6 in their half-ton and an inline in their HD trucks, and GM use a inline in their half-ton truck and a V engine in their HD truck though. So, you know, you would thought, you know, probably the Ram would use an inline just like they're using in the Cummins in their bigger truck, but it's not the case here. A lot of improvement in that engine. I've been talking about it a little bit earlier in the video. You know, we can feel the difference. You got better fuel economy, better performance, and also it's a little bit less noise, you know, in the cabin. So it's all the way a big plus. So if you're a Ram Ecodiesel owner, these are major update for the third generation. All right, speaking of capacity, this truck can get a max payload of 2,040 pounds and got a maximum towing capacity of 12,560 pounds. You know, if you're comparing these numbers to the competition, it's one of the highest in the half-ton diesel market. So it's a big plus for the Ram Ecodiesel. So obviously all trucks have their plus and minuses, and from my point of view, you know, if I compare it, this truck to the other half-ton on the market, overall, you know, obviously this truck's got the best interior. It's got that big 12-inch screen. It's really good looking. Everything is really practical. I like that metal console here. It's massive. You can do a lot of things with it. You can store pretty much anything inside of it. These seats are pretty much the best. Also, I prefer these seats than my own GMC I own. I think these are really comfortable. All these are really a big plus. One big plus for me also with the Rebel model, you can lock your rear axle. Some other competitor with the same kind of packaging, you're not able to do that. They have the auto axle lock. I like to have a manual one, you know, when you know what you're doing and you've been doing some off-roading, you like to have that option to really lock it manually. One of the major advantage of the Ram Ecodiesel, the starting price for the Ecodiesel is just below 50,000, and this is a really big plus. So you can get a base Ram, a tradesman, with the Ecodiesel, and from my point of view, it's a big plus. If you go in the GM products, for example, you can get the Duramax probably around 58,000-60,000, but that's the lowest price you can get. And if for you just want to have a truck with the fuel economy of a diesel, you don't want to spend all that money with all these options, you need something to work with, so the Ram might be the option for you in that case. Another major key feature against the competition, it's really the towing capacity. When you're stepping up the game in the 560 pounds, it's really higher than what you can get in the GM with the Duramax. The Duramax can tow 9,300 pounds. So it's a major difference between the GM products and the Ram for towing capacity. So if you need a diesel and you're towing more than 10,000 pounds, the Ram is the only option for you if you're looking at the GM. I know in this video I'm not talking really about the F-150 Power Stroke. I haven't drove the new Power Stroke lately, but still the F-150 right now, while I'm doing this video, it's kind of like an older model. You know, it's still on the 2015 platform. So right now, from my point of view, it's really, you know, in between Ram and GM for this market of new diesel. Some of the down points of this truck, it's just little things, you know. I don't have any buttons, you know, to turn on and turn off the heated seats, heated steering wheel. It can get annoying. You know, that screen looks really good, but if you're working with your truck or you're here in the winter, you know, with your glove, that screen is not the best for this kind of task. Obviously, other trucks maybe doesn't look as fancy as good, but they're more work friendly. Like the GMs are not as good looking inside, but you know, to work with, they're easier and more practical. So you know, it all depends. It's for you. You know, it's always like what you're doing with your truck. Overall, you know, power wise, the GM powertrain, it's more fun to drive. It's a little bit more, it's better on fuel economy. Just a slight difference, but if for you need more towing capacity, you're gonna go with the Ram. You know, overall, I've been enjoying driving this Ram Rebel this week. You know, I didn't get the fuel economy numbers of the Silverado and Sierra, but for me, it's not a big deal breaker. You know, I wouldn't, you know, really choose one of the other just for 1 or 2 liters per 100 kilometers. Overall, it's the experience of the truck, how you feel inside of it, what you like. Do you like a big screen or you need more a practical truck? Each truck have their plus and minuses. So overall, you know, for me, I need a little bit more performance than this. I think the Ram with the Ecodiesel, it's great if you want to do a lot of mileage. It's fun to drive. It needs a little bit more performance from my point of view to really enjoy it on a daily basis. But overall, you know, it's a great truck, especially again, you know, if you like diesel, you're towing. Diesel, it's always a big plus. Even if you don't drive it eco-friendly, you're still gonna get some good fuel economy numbers, and for me, this is the big plus of buying a diesel.